All right, welcome everyone. We got a special guest today, Evan Herman from Hermanomics. Evan's been in the space and we've known each other. I don't know how long it's been, Evan. What, at least 7 or 8 years,
Yeah,
longer than
eight
that,
years.
maybe 8 years
Yeah,
ago.
8 years, 2015, going back when the talent acquisition tech, pre-HR tech in Vegas, 2015.
Oh, all right. So we're going to talk today about Evan's been doing a lot of consulting for TA teams and HR teams in the space of skills, in the space of sourcing tools, and overall implementations. And he's got a rich background in everything from high volume to sourcing, especially in the financial industry. Anything else I missed there, Evan?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Also have a background, like everyone else, I got my start on the agency side back home in Chicago.
All right. All right. What we want to talk about today is one of the topics I know that is true to you is sourcing. That's been an area that I think a lot of people talk about. There's even SourceCon out there. But if we've got HR directors and HR managers on who may not go to SourceCon and may not know about sourcing entirely, why don't you tell me, how would you define sourcing and possibly different use cases or the differences between sourcing and different types of companies and what that whole landscape looks like?
Sure. Yeah, it's a common question even amongst my fellow sourcers. You ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers.
Yep.
Yeah, before getting into that, I think it's first and foremost, I think one thing we will all agree on as you put together a team, HR and talent acquisition leaders, sourcers, no matter how you define them, we are not junior recruiters. Okay. Everyone that calls themselves a sourcer, we can all agree on that. They are your sourcing partner, an equal partner with your so called full life cycle recruiters.
Got it. So that differentiation there is that a sourcer is a unique special talent within a recruiting team, and not all recruiters are sourcers, and not all sourcers have a specialty within the whole TA side of things.
Yes, exactly. No matter how you define it, which I'll get into at long last momentarily, sourcers are specialists. They focus on filling pipelines and ultimately filling the seats, whereas recruiters work the rec, which includes a lot of the work in the ATS system, the HR, the admin work. And then sourcers are just focused on people, pipelines, seats, etc. And they're a different skill set. They're both equal. They're both important, but neither is above the other. They're
Got
equal
it.
partners. They jointly work with the hiring manager in the line of business to fill seats, fill recs.
And specifically in that, what are the types of roles that, like, when would a team need a sourcer? And no, what are the problems that are happening in the company that a sourcer solves? Even if it's a contract sourcer, a fractional sourcer, or somebody picks up the skills to actually be a sourcer. How does that differentiate for types of different roles you might be hiring for?
Sure. It basically a sourcer probably makes sense whether an internal partner or an external partner when you're not seeing the quantity or quality of candidates needed uh, by your hiring managers.
Got it. All right. So it's a combination of quality and the numbers. If you're only getting 10 people and they're not qualified, you probably need to build a pipeline, and that's where you bring in a sourcer, right?
Exactly. We're posting alone. You can have the best job posting, the best job description, the best advertisements that you hope go viral. If you're just not seeing the quality of candidates and the amount, then you want someone that specializes in driving candidates to you, not reacting to inbound applicants.
And that also leads into passive candidates and hard to find candidates. So if you're looking for an AI person at the moment that's got a PhD in AI, you're probably not going to find that person on a post on Indeed. You have to go find those individuals, especially when they have specific industry or experience, that's where a sourcer needs to go in, right?
Excellent. Yeah, and you bring in an excellent segue back to the original question of, what is a sourcer? So now that we defined at least what sourcing is separate from so-called full life cycle recruiters, now you got to break down sourcing. In
Yep.
my personal opinion, when you ask me, a sourcer is someone that actually sells. They speak with candidates. They actually sell a passive candidate on interviewing with you, or at least engaging with you and your recruiting team. But then there's other type of people that think sourcing is more just pure finding people. And that's fine, but I prefer to call those sourcing researchers, or just researchers for
Yep.
short. And it's a different skill set. It's an important part of sourcing. Just in my view, it's not synonymous, because when you go into, say, supply chain, something isn't sourced till you actually bring it in house to the company, till they actually get the product. So to me, in recruiting, when you source someone, you actually get them in play, engaging with you, talking about a job.
Got it. And so I think that's clear. Let me see if I've got it on my side. One of the, when you're talking about sourcing, one of the key differentiations is if your pipeline is not big enough, there is, and depending on the volume, whatnot, you need to research individuals and go find them. And if you don't have that many recs, so correct me if I'm wrong here, if you don't have that many recs, maybe your sourcer is taking on that role of researching too. If you've got lots of recs, you probably need a specialist in that position to do the go out and find them and then hand them to Evan. Evan would then bring them to the table, get them on the phone, understand what their needs are, build a relationship with the candidate, and then move that candidate into the recruiting process. Sound about right?
Exactly.
Got it. All right. All right, great. So we talked about what are three different, we had talked about in the green room, three different types of use cases for sourcing. Because we talked about there's a staffing has sourcing, there is corporate recruiting has sourcing, there's like RPO sourcing, there's, different types of sourcing. So name a couple of those, and what are the different use cases that are most commonly HR would deal with?
Yeah, you always need to segregate sourcing recruiters and sourcing staffers. Staffing and recruiting are related, but different games entirely. And staffing deals with basically everything. It tends to be more high volume, but it's basically, look, we just need someone minimally qualified as quickly as possible. More or less, you hire them straight on their resume.
Yeah. Yep.
Assuming everything else is in order, you're hiring them. If they're minimally qualified and interested, and they're open to the compensation, they could fill the seat. That
Yep.
staffing is all about filling seats, nothing more, with minimally qualified people as quickly as possible.
Yep.
Recruiting is more about getting the right people, ideally as quickly as possible, but not necessarily as quickly as possible. It's more important to get the right people and the best people, not just the minimally qualified people.
Got it. All right. All right. And then, so when we talk about those different kind of use cases, a staffing sourcer, and then in corporate, if they're looking for, say, an engineer versus a director of account management or something like that in sales side, and just as some examples, what kind of tools are companies using? And also, maybe you could presence this in ideally the size of the company or industry, because I would gather finance probably has some sourcing tools and things like that are more important than, say, an engineering company. What kind of tools have you seen out there? What are the kind of most common ones that show up at HR Tech or people are going to hear about? And how do they differentiate between those types of tools and the type of company that should be looking at buying them?
hmm
There's a
well,
lot in there, by the way.
there's a lot, so it'd be tough to narrow it down. But first of all, you hit the nail on the head of a real problem. Tool selection is no different than recruiting, in the sense you're matching a solution with a problem.
Yep.
And if you are if you have a staffing problem and you're using a recruiting solution, which occurs a lot, you're going to have problems, and you're not going to be getting the results you were looking for when making your purchase. But yeah, on the sourcing side, the biggest players, there are some unicorns out there. One of them is called SeekOut, and another large, it's most often compared to another large player called HireEZ.
Okay.
And those, basically, for purposes of people not familiar with them, they are your Boolean wizards, your auto search the internet, basically with the click of a button or the enter of a couple words, and off you go. Uh, your research god, your research wizard,
Yep.
and able to navigate the large universe and filter it out with relative ease. And those are you if that's a need of yours, to filter it down, get more out of maybe a short staffed team, like you don't have a full blown sourcing team, you're always at least going to want to be looking at those two tools. But there's
Yep.
also emerging ones that are
And
coming up.
before you jump in that one, so and those are often used for passive candidates, and they may. And then let me break this down. Are those just looking at public information and social sites, or are they looking at, when you say you put in your criteria, say I'm looking for a Java engineer or an AI engineer, and add a bunch of criteria for the Boolean search, where are these systems looking? Are they looking in your own ATS? Are they looking in job boards that you maybe have a membership with, or are they just trying to surf the web and try to find it from there?
If you ask their sales rep, it absolutely will search your ATS. If you ask a lot of recruiters, you might get a slightly different answer depending on which ATS they have.
All right, so I know we're joking about that, but because you're joking, I know there's a lot of pain and suffering that's happened, and companies are doing it, and that's why we joke about it. Because so identify that real quick, because my goal is to educate HR and talent leaders about this stuff. And everyone's got a great sales deck about how they use AI, and the only thing they really have in AI is they learned how to spell it and they changed the font, right? So we it's AI washing, right? So now tell me about sourcing in that use case. Like, why do you say that, or what should somebody be looking for? When I asked it, if I was an HR leader, say, yeah, we need a sourcing tool, and then we talk to a bunch of people and we find out it doesn't even look in our own ATS.
And yeah, that's another field, another class of tools, and that's why separate so-called talent rediscovery tools exist. And two of those are HireEZ and Eightfold, that have
Got
been the main two players in that. If you're looking like, hey, let's stop first going external and reinventing the wheel on every search, let's make sure we're leveraging what we already have. Yeah, you definitely would want to at least be familiarizing yourself with HireEZ and Eightfold.
Okay. All right. So then let me throw another one at you too. And I hadn't even thought about this before, but you just brought it up. Is there's a lot of talk now about soft skills and internal retention hiring. What are the tools out there now? And I've even talked to ML guys that are actually building these things and done phenomenal work with this stuff. But you know the tools. So what's actually out there and what's coming, or what's the most important thing to think about if you're trying to do retention hires, or someone's an engineer but is not moving forward, and maybe it's not even from a sourcing, we're getting outside of the sourcing realm a little bit, but it is still sourcing within your company to find candidates. Have you seen many tools like that now that are out there in the market?
Yeah, there now you're veering more into like HR stuff, because you're talking
Yeah.
about
Yep.
existing employees, and not as you get into existing employees, the talent acquisition tool space is large enough. It gets exponentially bigger, and like off the cuff, there's too many options, and I'd probably mix them up to mention anything
Got it.
specific. But
Right.
yeah, there are a lot of those, and they all have a different special sauce and different pitch, and the buyers get confusing, and that's why you should want to look at somebody that is, in essence, is a headhunter for you, but for tools instead of people,
All
to
right.
kind of
We're
navigate
gonna,
that
yeah,
universe for you.
and we'll talk about that in another one, because I think, and maybe another segment, we got to talk about the process of choosing vendors and what else goes into it. We'll wrap this one up in just a couple minutes because I want to ask three things about. So we talked about some sourcing tools. We talked about corporate versus staffing. We talked about sourcing your own ATS versus sourcing public sites. And so the public site stuff, I wanted to ask a couple questions on that one. So say you have SeekOut or HireEZ. What do they do? What sites do they go out to?
Yeah, a lot of it is just scraping the sites that and searching them. LinkedIn, Indeed, just public sites, just anything that's publicly available, most by definition, and just doing it to you on your behalf at scale and making it filterable in a digestible format. But yeah, more or less, they're just pulling from public data. But in my experience, the shortcoming of almost all the tools out there, not just HireEZ and SeekOut, is like the particularly for tech professionals or anything like with like academics or people that might have a portfolio is their personal sites, and they often miss out on those. They often have their resume right there. If they could find the algorithm to better find personal sites and deliver it to people, I think they'll find a lot more buyers and find a lot more happy buyers if they find a way to deliver that. That's
Got it.
the
Got it.
void in the market. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically almost being able to use a much broader, instead of just everyone's on LinkedIn, everyone's on Indeed or whatnot. It's what are all those web pages of electrical engineers who have 15 different years of experience in manufacturing or something like that. And they just happen to have a bunch of content on their own site. And they don't, but they're not in a job board because they're not passively looking or actively looking for anything. So
Yeah.
that's the gap, you'd say?
Yeah, exactly. Is getting those non-mainstream sites. In other words, there's only one of them, and those
Yep.
unique web pages that are full of actually the quality content. So it's about quality, not quantity.
Yep.
And as I bring up mass search in the market and delivering to you in a digestible format, I'd be remiss in not also bringing up a tool called Findem.
Okay. Yeah.
That's in
When
the
what's
same.
Findem do?
So it's a funny thing in the sourcing tool. They are more of talent and intelligent tools that's available for sourcers, whereas say HireEZ and SeekOut were developed as sourcing tools that often, as a result of that, deliver great talent intelligence to you. So it's like different approach with the same goals. They're serving the same people just with different routes. So Findem's more a talent intelligence tool first. That's their background
Yep.
and delivers sourcing via intelligence, whereas Seek Out and HireEZ by sourcing people for you are also delivering talent intelligence to you. But
Got
they're
it. Got it.
sourcing tools first.
Got it. All right. All right. So let's wrap this one up because I know we're going to do at least one more of these to talk about another topic. So what's the best way for people to reach you, Evan?
Yeah, first and foremost, the best way is LinkedIn. I'm Evan Herman on LinkedIn. My business is Hermanomics, HRMANOMICS. Twitter is I'm Hermanomics on Twitter, same spelling, or just email me at evan.homics.com.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for your time, Evan.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to our next one.